I'm aware I'm cheating, okay? Okay, Hermione Granger's out there, I'm aware. I'm excited about this one. The meal, not the person, fuck the person. Hi, hello and welcome, this is my channel. If you're new here, the fuck is happening in the street? Well, am I gonna stop? Probably not. If you're new here, this is the last meal segment. It's actually quite simple. A girl, me, Maja, hi, welcome, sits down and she eats a meal, and that meal just happens to be the last meal of somebody's life. They're usually on a death row. Remember how I said I'm cheating here? Yeah, let me not spoil the story, but yeah, what can we tell about the person that ate this last meal? A, they loved breakfast, like me. Or was it that the breakfast just happened to be their last meal? For some reason, unknown reason, this is, you're in for a long one. The guy killed 17 people. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know when he had time. If we can learn one single thing from Jeffrey Dahmer, the guy I'm talking to you about today, is that if you truly commit to something, you can achieve anything in your life. Like, just don't, or maybe what we can learn about from Jeffrey today is not to take everything that seriously. It's not that hard not to take things so seriously like Jeffrey fucking did. So, let's begin from his childhood, did it? Why not? Ugh. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to start eating. There's like a lot to eat here. So what do we have? We have some toast, we have coffee, we have milk, well, no, we have cereal, okay? I don't like soggy cereal, that was the arrangement here. That's why. And we have like one egg. Cool, where do I start from? This is always the weirdest. Okay, cool, so young boy Jeff, yeah? He was a child once, and boy, what a child he was. Okay, the toast should still be warm, so let's start from the toast. Well, you know what? This is dry. Just fucking toast. Also, as I like to immerse myself into these things, I went to the supermarket and got like the cheapest bread. I was like, they wouldn't have got a nice bread in prison. Duh. Okay, so, Jeff, he was a child once, and boy, what a child he was. Not normal, definitely not. In terms of childhoods, Jeffrey actually didn't have like the worst childhood, he didn't have the best one. Compared to some things I read, Jeffrey's child was beautiful, maybe. Yeah, no, but yeah, listen. He was born in 1960 in Milwaukee. Actually, I've read in one source that he was born in Ohio, so what's that all about? It's like all these different states when I claim Jeffrey. It's like, okay, stop fighting us. Okay. He was born in Milwaukee, 1960, to dad and mom, Lionel and Joyce. Joyce was special. Joyce was that type of mom that truly just wanted attention for herself. She was like, listen, Lionel, you gotta put me first. Like, I don't care much about this fucking kid. She was a hypochondriac. She used to take like shit ton of pills. She tried to commit suicide multiple times for her life, but she was one of those women who was just like, no, put me first, I don't care about this fucking kid. So Jeffrey was a bit neglected, you could really say, because his dad was out there trying to make money for this family, trying to like get them to just survive in general, while his mom was just losing his mind, and every day the dad would come from home, you know, she would require all of the attention. So Jeffrey was there like, I exist, hello. And then at the age of 4, so like pretty early again, he had like a traumatic event where he had to undergo a double hernia operation. Double hernia is kind of like your scrotum area, boys, right? Am I right? She says as she eats an egg. Okay, so young Jeff had an operation. It was painful as fuck. And since then he kind of got even more withdrawn, as if he wasn't like already fucked up. His dad Lionel also recalls this event from the childhood, which kind of makes it clear why Jeffrey was fascinated by bones. Well, it doesn't, but you know, for you or me this is like nothing. So Lionel was clearing out like some bones from, I don't know, birds or something. Again, sketchy situation. But yeah, let's say it was like stray birds or stuff, and yeah, he was just clearing out the bones in the yard, and Jeffrey came out and he was just staring. He was just like fascinating. It was like joy from Friends' eyes, like bones. I like the sounds of it. I like the looks of it. And Lionel was just like, oh, hey, Jeffrey, yeah, let's bring you in. But the problem in this fucking household was that Lionel was a scientist. So every fascination that Jeffrey would display, Lionel would be like, oh my god, my son is showing an interest in my job. Do you see it? Do you see it? It was like at the dinner table, and Jeffrey would be like, so Dad, hey, you know those bones, right? How would you, let's say you had an animal, let's say it's an animal, how would you like dispose of the flesh in the best way so that you get to those bones? And his dad was like, oh my god, my son has an interest, let me tell you about acid. And those were their fucking conversations at the dinner table, and Joyce was just there like, you can not even pay attention to me, please, please. Jeff, yeah? I can bet this like fucking whole trade situation gives people anxiety. So yeah, his father pushed it even further, okay? He kind of taught Jeff, well, how to preserve animal parts by, you know, submerging into different like acid, formaldehyde, all of this shit. Also, the neighbors later, in the later interviews, because everything was made about Jeffrey Dahmer, documentaries, he had interviews, he was fucking famous as fuck, everybody wanted to take a peek at his brain and be like, what is wrong with you, sir? So, these neighbors later came out and they were like, oh yeah, we have seen like a lot of impaled animal bodies around that area when Jeffrey lived there, but yeah, we just never reported it. Interesting, yeah. Healthy Interest by Jeffrey Dahmer, the book. Now at the age of 6, his brother is born, and his parents, to show him this tremendous love that they had for Jeffrey, are like, yeah, go ahead and name your brother. He does, he gives him like a cool names, like David Dahmer, nice name. I was actually thinking that Jeffrey's gonna start pulling pranks then and there, but no, he waited until school to do that. What would his classmates tell about him? All the best, of course. In school, Jeffrey started being famous for pulling a Dahmer, which already means he was a prankster. He was a bit of a prankster, okay? He started drinking since he was 13. So, first of all, he used to say that alcohol was his medicine to like the teachers or anybody that would catch him drink. Yeah, he really used to do the most. He was the guy that would like fake seizures in the corridors. Which I suppose you have like maybe a couple of seizures to fake, and then everybody's just like, yeah, it's just Jeff fucking having a seizure in the corridor. He would go into like different prom pictures, you know how they have like a class photo and then it's like, oh, honorary students, and Jeffrey was like, woo, I almost failed, but hey. Yeah, it was just like the kind of thing that Jeffrey would do. Now this is also within high school when Jeffrey realized he was gay. But he also realized he doesn't want to just date anybody, you know, he doesn't actually want to date any of his classmates or anybody. But you're like, okay, cool, Jeffrey, you have standards, but no. Now, what Jeffrey truly wanted was somebody he can dominate, somebody he can own, technically, as a person, somebody that will never run or escape. Around that time, his parents realized they have been having like marital problems for quite a while, and they decide to get divorced. So just around his high school graduation, his parents actually get divorced. And during that time, it's not actually clear how, but like, I think one of them moved out and then the other one was like on holiday. So Jeffrey actually had a house to himself. So this is now year 78 and Jeffrey has a house to himself. And now you think like, oh my god, I wish I had the house to myself. I would do such sick things. I would have a party. Oh my god, I'll have friends over. Don't do it, COVID. But anyways, Jeffrey, different. So Jeffrey picks up his first victim, Stephen Hicks. He was only 18 years old. He was hitchhiking at that time. Jeffrey picks him up and he's like, you know, wanna do this? God, the Maja's lingo. Not funny. He doesn't do funny things. He brings Hicks to his house, and this is where, well, he hits him with a barbell, He murders Hicks. Then he does this thing, well, he pulls a gas in, brings the body to a crawl space, but he doesn't leave the body in a crawl space. He dismembers it there, takes like different parts of the body, puts it into the acid, then crushes the bones, like turns the bones technically into ash, then brings those bones into like the family yard, digs a hole, puts those bones in there, and then like continues the process because it's a human body. There's a lot of work to be done. He just truly did the most. Why did this guy do all of this work? Of course, so he continues, but now he needs to relive it. So he constantly goes and like digs these bones out from that hole to relive it, like, and then he realizes like he needs another fix. But it will actually be 11 years until he gets another fix. Well, now you're like, that's hella weird, right? Yeah. So usually when the serial killers are inactive, it's A, they're dead. 2, they have had like something in their lives, so some of them have kids, so that's why they stop. Jeffrey went to military. As again, like a trait of many serial killers, they like thrive on this structure, they like really need it in their lives. Jeff went to the military, and he also trained to be a nurse in the military as well. You see, fascination with bodies. In particular, for Jeffrey, the fascination was the torsos, which, I mean, you're like, I get it if that was like a healthy fascination, but don't get you, mate. So, okay, Jeff. As I mentioned now, there is about 11 years gap, and he only spent around 4 years in the military. And that's because, obviously, this guy is not going to be an exemplary person in the military. Remember Gary Heineck, he also got like discharged. So Jeffrey got discharged because of his alcoholism, actually, and because he was just, yeah, alcoholism was just affecting everything. So he was just discharged. So he was discharged under that code, which was like, hey, yeah, he was just boozing on the job. You know, the famous military code. But it was actually said that other people came and reported that Jeffrey raped them, drugged them, and raped them. But obviously, if you know what's going on in the news right now, that there's like a whole serial killer on the loose, you know, with Vanessa Gillian and everything, yeah, the military truly just trusts their own, and obviously they discarded that. He was not actually discharged from the military because of that. So now Jeffrey is around like 26 years of age, and you know, he's a grown-ass man now, right? He can go and do whatever he wants. Well, after his military, he goes to live with his grandma, and he lives in the basement. Basements. Great stuff. Also, man, grandmas have seen some shit, I'm not gonna lie to you. So, yep, he does that. He's with his grandma, living with his grandma. And there's an event from this, during this period, he starts working at the Ambrosia chocolate factory. Shit, there's food next to me, okay. Lols. Ambrosia chocolate factory, right? This is like fucking stoned by now, right? Toast, delicious. Thanks, Jeffrey. Cool. Had chocolate for free and I'm eating toast, idiot. So, Ambrosia chocolate factory, right? So he was being paid like $9 an hour, which at that point probably wasn't as bad, right? Probably today is like kind of minimal wage. I don't know the American deal, I don't know, sorry about that. During this time, fuck this stuff. During this time, there's this event of Jeffrey experimenting. So you again, because I'm always thinking like, how was he dormant for about 11 years? Well, he wasn't really dormant, was he? He was raping people in the military, first of all, and making them, well, turning them into zombies and just raping them. And then he was experimenting. So for the rest of the time after the military, he was really just experimenting. So there was this event during this time while he was working for the Ambrosia chocolate factory, and that's that one evening he just broke into like a department store. And now you're like, you know, that sounds like a sick night, right? If you had a chance, you know, that CCTVs aren't looking and stuff, you'd be like, yeah, try all the clothes, you know, don't steal. But anyways, well, obviously that's not what Jeffrey was doing in this department store. No, he stole a mannequin. And then he stored that mannequin and practiced sexual practices on him in his basement, right? And that's until the grandma discovered the mannequin, and grandma just never questioned it, but he had to get rid of it because now grandma knew that he's fucking weird. I'm sorry, this is all when he was 24. When he was about 26, so we are now what, 86, year 1986, right? Because he was born in 1960. Ma, doing it, owning it. Way too proud about that, way too proud about it. Yeah, so he is arrested because he was caught masturbating to a 12-year-old boy at like the bank of this river in Milwaukee, which I can't pronounce. It's here on the screen. Kini something. Why are there no vowels in this fucking word? He gets arrested, but he again gets a slap on the wrist. He only got 1 year of probation. And now we get to the escalation. So we get to year 1987, when Jeffrey struck his second victim. Now there's gonna be a couple of victims that he brings to his grandma's basement, and grandma just doesn't notice that these people are not coming out alive. So in November 1987, Jeffrey gets Stephen Tuomi to get into this hotel with him. So they go into Ambassador Hotel, and well, they have sex, like they fall asleep, and Jeffrey actually doesn't remember this one, like he blacked out. But he woke up and he realized 25-year-old Stephen Tuomi was just dead next to him, and he's like, well, what do I do now? Rational person calls 911. Jeffrey was no rational person. This is truly when it comes to light that, and I kind of need to mention it just because everybody does with Jeffrey, and it's kind of interesting to think about it. Jeffrey was a product killer. So there's process and product killers. Process killers get off on everything that they do to you, mostly once you're alive. So, you know, bind, torture, kill, Gary Heidnik, like all of those people who are just like actually getting off on the torture. Jeffrey didn't care that now he woke up and he couldn't use and abuse the victim that he had next to him. He was like, well, this is great, I have a dead body. So what does Jeffrey do? He puts the body of Stephen Tuomi in a suitcase and he brings him back to the grandma's basement. And this is where he does his dismembering, and yep, he does the dismembering, keeps him for a couple of days, again goes back and forth to dismember him, and then disposes of him, and his remains were never found. You could say that this is when the escalation starts, because now Jeffrey kind of does his kills in the span of only a couple of months. And it will also be 2 other victims that Jeffrey gets to kill before his grandma gets fed up with his drunkenness. And again, it's not that she knew what he was doing, it's that he was just drunk and just coming in late, going or like all these things, which she was like, yo, I'm a grandma, let me live my best life. Leave me alone. So fairly early in 1988, in January, he meets James Dockstader, and he meets this 14-year-old boy in a gay bar. This is when Jeffrey's MO starts to formulate, so it's like how he approaches the victims, and he finds out what works for him. So here he's still like practicing. He meets James at the bar, and he's like, well, I'm gonna pay you about 50 quid, you know, you look great, you look like you have a aspiring modeling career. Come here to my flat, pose for nudes, I'll pay you $50, and then yeah, you can go and continue living with your life. And the guy accepts, and that's the last that the world has seen of James Dockstader. As I mentioned, Jeffrey saw this as practice, so here he kept the body of James Dockstader for about a week in the basement, dismembering him and just throwing his body parts into trash. And again, no remains were ever found. Only about 2 months later, so in March 1988, Jeffrey meets Richard Guerrero, who was 22. Again, here he followed his MO because he knew it worked. He knew it worked since the childhood. So he would dispose of the body in acid and then like dispose of like the bones and the rest in trash. But here with Richard Guerrero, he gets fascinated by the idea of keeping trophies, and he keeps his skull and he preserves it for months. How Jeffrey would preserve skulls, usually that will become apparent later as well, was that he would spray paint them like into grey. Different reasons for that. So one is A, preservation, he probably knew how to preserve it best, but B, it's because these skulls are going to become important to him as trophies. And once he gets his own place, and he is going to do this spray painting just in case, you know, somebody actually comes to his flat, or just when he's bringing the victims to his flat, and if they're still not drugged and delusional and they see a skull, they don't freak out. They're like, well, he just collects these weird skulls that are definitely not human. In September 1989, Dahmer has a really lucky escape. He was actually caught with a boy from Laos, like a Laotian boy, and he is charged for sexual exploitation. But yet again, he gets a slap on the wrist. He gets to have 1 year in prison and 5 years probation. And even during this time in prison, apparently in the US this was a thing then. This is still kind of a thing in Scandinavia, and I actually really vouch for it in terms of with some offenders, okay? Probably not here with Jeffrey, to be honest, because he was already like doing the most. He could spend the day outside of the prison and then he would like return to spend the night. So he was still working in his ambrosia chocolate factory during this time. So obviously this allows him to still put grandma's basement to the good use, according to him. Okay, I'm not saying this is a good use of a basement. Fuck me, don't come for me. His next victim was a 24-year-old aspiring model, Anthony Sears. And this is, I think, with Anthony Sears, his fully flexed fantasy starts to show. First of all, Anthony Sears is his first black victim, and ever since then, Jeffrey just going to start killing black men. So with him, he has done everything that he has practiced for. He would drug him, he would, well, rape him, technically, because that's not sex, if he is not awake. Then he would sodomize the body, take pictures of the body. Once he was dead, he would like make sure that he poses the body in all these different positions that would turn him on, and that then he could relive. He would dismember the body, put it into acid, get rid of it, keep different trophies. So he kept different parts of Anthony as well, so it wasn't just a skull. And when I mean other parts, I mean genitals. So this is when his grandma is finally fed up with him, and she's like, yeah, just move the hell out. This thing started to smell as well, probably. And she's like, yeah, I believe you, Jeff, but this kind of smells fucking foul. So he moves to the apartment that's again one of the most infamous apartments in the world's history, 213 Oxford Apartments. Obviously, this was in the rough neighborhood of Milwaukee for a reason. This is the first in the last meal's history. My camera couldn't deal with how many people Jeffrey Dahmer killed and corrupted some footage, so here we are. Year 1990, Jeffrey Dahmer moved into the flat, right? And you know, you can think like yourself, what would you do? Housewarming party, sick, you know, bring like large amount of friends. Pandemic wasn't fuming back then, don't do it now, it's COVID, right? Well, back in the day, Jeffrey went and met Raymond Lamont Smith, who was actually, I think, his oldest victim. Raymond was 32 years old. And, well, he has followed his MO. He has offered Raymond to come to his flat with him. Now, you know, he has an apartment where he proceeded to drug him, then, well, to strangle him, kill him, and then obviously just disposed of his body the same old way. The remains were again never found, but he started keeping skulls. He started like collecting trophies now. So he kept Raymond's skull. This is the only one, and I hate that this is not on like a proper fucking footage, because this is where I asked everybody to leave their comments below, because this is where he strayed away from his usual MO, and I truly need to pick your brain as to why he did it, because I don't understand. So here, because now obviously he has their details, right? Because he actually bonds with them, you know, asks them for their name. Guess what, also he probably has their ID and stuff, because he kills them, owns them. Jeffrey. So in this case, what he did is a year after this kill, he rang his sister, he rang Raymond's sister and told him that her brother is dead. Told him like, hey, I'm the one that killed his brother. Which I don't understand, because if he is a product killer, why has he done this? Tell me, drop the comments down below, why has he done this? June 14 that year, he meets Edward Warren Smith. Again, he is the last person that was seen with Edward at a party. Edward was around 27, and again, he brings him to the flat. However, now with Jeffrey, of course, needs to do something different with every kill. So, with Edward, he like does the same old thing. He keeps the skull, and he's like, genius. Let me put the skull into the oven and see what happens. Let me experiment. What happens when you put the skull in the oven and you turn the oven up? The skull exploded. And he was like, ah, oh, damn it. Waste of fucking product. The way that Jeffrey saw his victims was not normal. His remains were never found. But now there's 2 victims in this flat. It's starting to smell foul. It doesn't matter that he has like a barrel where he started to dispose of the victims. No, it starts to smell. So the neighbors are like, knock, knock. Hey, Jeffrey, why does it smell? And he's like, well, funny story. I have this fish, right? I have this aquarium of fish. And suddenly just like the fish died, okay? So like, I just need to clean out the aquarium. They're like, sure. Continues to smell. Jeffrey hasn't cleaned out the aquarium. They called the landlord. The landlord rings him. He's like, it's a dodgy neighborhood. I'm not gonna come to visit, as you know. Can you fucking clean the aquarium? Jeffrey's like, don't worry, I got it. Did he ever clean the aquarium? No, because there's no aquarium. Now let's go back to me actually eating food and telling you a story. Is there more corrupt footage? We'll never know. Again, I hear you. You're like, Maja, homegirl. He was in prison. What about the probation officer? Well, the probation officer, yeah, would sometimes come around. And obviously Jeffrey would tell the same old aquarium story. He just had like skulls that looked like memorabilia around his flat, and obviously he had just a barrel where he would submerge the bodies. He could justify a barrel, right? I don't know how you would justify a barrel. Sorry about that, but yeah, he just kept the apartment really clean. Yes, it did smell, but obviously he would hide the Polaroids. But also, more often than not, the probation officer chose not to come. It would just be like, a phone call. Jeffrey, you good? You're not committing crimes, right? Like, let's pinky promise. Yeah, cool. It's like over the phone pinky promise. Just because it was a poor neighborhood, it was a rough neighborhood, why would you wanna come there to visit him? As I mentioned, most of his victims were black. Some of them sex workers, some of them not. But again, rough neighborhood, black victims, people just weren't paying as much attention. Not to mention the biggest event that's gonna come up that kind of just wraps it all in together. The homosexuality and how it was taboo at the time, the fact that people were just blatantly racist, and that everybody just neglected to just imprison Jeffrey for a certain amount of time. Just put a guy where he belongs. No. We are still in the same year. It's September 2nd, 1990. Jeffrey meets Ernest Marquez Miller, who was 22 years old at the time, in front of a bookstore. And he again just like brings him home. But with every single one, like what drives me mad with Jeffrey is how he talks about these murders. It's just, he's such a perfectionist, but like pushed it a completely wrong way. This guy could have been doing something really fucking great, but no. He's like, with Ernest, what pissed him off is how messy it was. He was like, oh, here I made a mistake, and here I cut his like carotid artery, so he cut his neck for some reason. He didn't go for strangulation, which was his usual MO. He was like, oh, this was messy and I didn't like it. It's like, tough life, Jeffrey, you choose how you kill victims. First of all, you really don't have to be doing this. But second of all, it's kind of like your choice what you're doing to them. Like, nobody made you do this, Jeffrey. With Ernest, however, you could say that this is when the cannibalism started. Awkward moment, I know. So here, Jeffrey was like, okay, I'm fascinated with the bodies already. So, with Ernest, he kept his biceps, his heart, and the portions of his legs, so like the thickest meat parts, and he kept that in the freezer for later consumption. I don't know what to tell you. I truly don't know what to tell you. He kept it for later consumption. You think you've heard it all. You haven't heard it all. This hasn't escalated to the full Dahmer escalation yet. Now, of course, Jeffrey wouldn't repeat his old mistakes. He never blew up the skull twice. He never, like, made it messy twice. So only 22 days after this kill, he meets another victim in the mall. He meets David Courtney Thomas, who was 22 years old at the time. Again with this victim, he resorted to his old MO. You know, he would like strangle him, dismember him. Well, strangle him, take Polaroid pictures, dismember him, and then, yeah. Again, not to do this as Jeffrey, but I hate that he had to comment on every single one of them. So about this victim, he had to say that he wasn't his type. He was like, yeah, he was a bit ugly. He wasn't my type, so, you know, I didn't like preserve his body parts like with the other one. You know, like, yeah, there was, just wasn't that appealing to me to even like consume. You're like, okay, Jeff, chill. Like, I love how he's acting like, I'm so out of other people's league. It's like, Jeffrey, you're borderline psycho. Okay, lower your standards a bit. Fuck my life. It's like you're a product killer. You're like, they're not there for pleasure for you or themselves. This is not even, this is kind of like halfway through or just about after halfway through, like, this is insanity. Okay, I genuinely still cannot believe that this has happened on, like, in real life, and it's not like a Criminal Minds episode. But yeah, it happened. So, 1991, he meets Curtis Darrell Strotter, who was 17 at the time. It's like they're just getting younger and younger, Jeffrey. Can we calm it a bit? He meets him at the bus stop again, promises him like the nude pictures for some money, brings him to the flat, and again now he's kind of into keeping the body parts for later consumption, keeping them in the freezer. You know how you do like packed lunches? Yeah, Jeffrey had his own version of it. There's a term that I need to introduce to you that I never thought I would learn about in my fucking life. The term is love zombie. Yeah, because for Jeffrey now, this just isn't enough. Like, what is he gonna talk about to people when he gets caught? Like, is he escalating? He's not doing anything new with these new people, so he starts experimenting. And truly, he kind of went into lobotomy area. I don't know what else to call it. I don't know what else to call it. So, on April the 7th, that same year, 1991, he met Errol Lindsay. He brought Lindsay back home now, and as he's alive, well, he's drugged, Errol is drugged, but he's still alive, Jeffrey decides to drill a hole into his head and to put hydrochloric acid into it, just for kicks. Jesus. It's like Jeffrey just wanted to experiment, he just wanted to know how it felt, like, is he going to do something different? Because as you remember, the whole point with Jeffrey is that he doesn't want them alive, but he just wanted people not dead, not completely dead. So he wanted them in this zombie state where he could technically still do everything with them, but they would just be fully submissive. And he somehow thought that pulling acid into their head is gonna do that. Genius. Like, for somebody who's like, that was a scientist, you're like, really, Jeff? Errol, however, woke up during this process. He wasn't even dead. Just even like the suffering. He wasn't even dead during this whole process. So he just like woke up and he was like, hey, I'm a bit like dizzy. And Jeff was like, oh fuck, this is the opposite of what I wanted. So he proceeded to strangle him and just again dispose of his body, keep his skull. And Errol's skull was one of the skulls that the police officers found once they arrested him. Because now this is pretty soon, just like this is now approaching his arrest, but he's just escalated, so he's killing like a victim a month or two at a time. In May that year, Dahmer met Tony Hughes. Tony was 31, again he lured him in. With Tony again, Jeffrey kind of exploited his passion, and he actually kept his dead, decomposing body for about a couple of days. So I think it was like 3 days while he was taking Polaroids of the whole of dismemberment process. And again, he kept Tony's skull. Again, I'd love for you to drop me the comments below, because what stands out for me here when it comes to Tony is Tony was a deaf mute. So here Jeffrey kind of had to have some effort, you could say, yeah? He had to put some effort to even like communicate with him during the notes, like at this bar that they have met, and then, well, once he brought him home, of course, to like just write up the notes about like what he wants done, like how he wants Tony to pose. So I just find this weird again, because he didn't have to go the effort, right? Also, I feel like Jeffrey was that type of person that by this point genuinely thought like he was out of everybody's league. So this was kind of like, for me, I feel it kind of speaks to the fact that Jeffrey actually really wanted to understand possibly what a real relationship would feel like, because he never had one, he never had a consensual one. So he was like, well, this is the best I can do. And then he just continued to do what he knew how to do best. No, you're not ready, but I mean, you are ready. If you're into true crime, you know this event, because it's the worst event. It's like I actually neglected this food all the way until now. This is why I did it, because I don't like soggy cereal, okay? And then also what I like is my cereal submerged in milk. It's like the ratio is 3 milk, you know, 1 cereal. Is that a ratio? Okay, you know your mouth, Maja. Okay. The worst moment in the history of the fucking police officers, like in general, probably in life, but in Milwaukee for sure. These 2 police officers, Joseph Gabrish and John Balcerak, were called, well, were responding to the 911 call by, that was made by Sandra Smith. Sandra Smith was this lady, this black lady that lived in the complex, in the apartment complex. And what she witnessed that night probably scarred her for fucking life. She witnessed young 14-year-old Conorak Smithna Subson, I'll put his last name on the screen, I'm so sorry, I genuinely cannot pronounce this name. So Conorak was running out of Jeffrey's apartment complex completely naked, bleeding from his anus, and just completely disorientated. So Sandra Smith and a couple of other girls like came up to him and they were like, oh my god, like let's get you help. Let's call 911 and get you to the hospital. What has happened? Where is Jeffrey? Well, Jeffrey is coming down the street because at this point he was that relaxed that he left fucking Conorak out there, like out in the flat, still alive, drugged but still alive, and just went to get some beer. Like, I'm an alcoholic, that's like a primary thing for me. I've been doing it since I was 13. So these 2 officers come to the scene and you will be like, oh my god, this is positive, they're gonna get Jeffrey, they're gonna get Jeffrey, like they're gonna help this guy. No, this truly represents everything that's wrong with the society, okay? It's like, oh, well, the victim is black. I can tell you that these 2 cops were like, felt fucking uncomfortable as fuck. They're like, oh my god, like, homosexuals, and one of them is black, this is unacceptable. So Jeffrey, of course, was like, hey, don't worry, this is just a lover's quarrel. Of course he's 19, he's not 14, look at him, he looks 19, right? We've just been drinking. So sorry, officers, so sorry for this problem. I'm just gonna pull him back to the flat. And he just literally drags the guy away. And Sandra Smith and these other women are just like protesting. They're like, what the fuck are you letting this happen? You're letting the guy go with him. He's bleeding from his anus. And the cops went proper aggressive. They told Sandra and the other girls to butt off. They were like, no, stop like intervening into lovers' quarrel. And they even joked, you know, like when they went back into the car on like the dispatcher things, like just lovers' quarrel. We didn't even bother, you know, taking their names. We just like lovers' quarrel. We didn't give a fuck. Had they given a fuck for 2 months, for 2 next months, 4 lives would have been saved. 4 fucking lives, because Jeffrey was killing now 2 people a month and he wasn't called for 2 other months. Also, you would think like, okay, these officers, right? They must have been like fired, shamed, disowned, license taken. No, once Jeffrey was discovered 2 months after that, those 2, yes, have been suspended temporarily, but then both of them got the Officers of the Year awards. Like, what is life? What is life? This milk is warm right now. I don't like anything about this anymore. You destroyed breakfast for me, Jeffrey. You fucking destroyed breakfast food for me. For life. God's sake. Now, on June 30th that year, there was a Chicago Pride Parade. So Jeffrey actually went the distance. Fucking creep. But yeah, he was just like on his parade and he came across Matt Turner, who was 20 at the time. And well, he just actually brought Matt back all the way to Milwaukee. Like, what did they talk about? What did they chat about? Jeffrey didn't have friends. Did he know how to communicate to people? Probably not. And while we met, he followed his dismembering. And again, he kept his torso, he put the torso in this gallon, in this barrel, in this 57-gallon barrel contraption thing to dissolve, and then he preserved his skull and kept like some of his organs in the freezer again. One thing, did I mention that Jeffrey loved torso the most, right? Because of the nurse thing in the military and stuff? Yeah, torso is the last thing he would dispose of. listen, as an actual torso lover of living humans alive, no, just no, this is not it, this ain't it. Then in July again, he was in Chicago and he met Jeremiah Weinberger, who was 23 years old. And he again brings him to Milwaukee, he's just chatting. One thing, I don't think that Jeffrey was a charmer. Like, he was probably, during his young days, one of the hottest serial killers, you could probably say. Like, he wasn't ugly, but again, hottest in the serial killer term, right? Hottest in the serial killer term, not like normal human term. Like, his eyes are empty, he looked dead inside. But yes, I don't think that Jeffrey had a talk. Like, I don't think he was out there, you know, doing the most in terms of like chatting people up. I think he was just like, again, focused on his main goal. So it was like, hey, you wanna come over? I'll take pictures of you. Yeah, you just pay me, you're gonna have your Polaroids, look at that. He was just like, he knew what worked and he would just get down to business straight away, and he knew it was gonna work. So he brings this poor soul to his flat. This guy was different. Again, Jeffrey had to have a different story. So instead of the acid, he puts boiling water into his brain, and somehow this guy managed to actually live for an extra day. And then once in his drowsy state he actually wanted to leave Jeffrey got pissed. He was like, oh my god, what you mean leave me? Like, the whole point was for you never to leave. And that's when he killed him. And with him, he actually kept his dismembered body in a bathtub for like a week. Just imagine the smell before even like disposing him into the gallon. And honestly, I think, yes, he was trying to do something different. He was enjoying himself too deeply with these things. But also, I think he was now doing them too frequently. So this acid probably, okay, again, not a scientist, I have no fucking clue what I'm talking about, but I just think like he was kind of like escalating. He was doing two guys, like he was killing 2 people a month at least. So obviously this gallon, I don't know if he could have dissolved during all this time, you know. It was a lot of fucking work. Get a hobby, Jeffrey, get a single hobby. Oh, and he said that Jeremiah was different because he was the only guy that died with his eyes open. Just coming out, I need therapy after this. I need therapy. On July, he meets Oliver Lacey, who was 24 years old. And this guy was a bodybuilding enthusiast, so you know that he loved his torso. Jeffrey was out there being like, you look nice, yeah. So, he brings this guy again home. And because he loved his sculpture, with Oliver, he kept his skeleton, because now his memorabilia escalated to not just being skulls, but he had skeleton corner as well. Honestly, if this guy hasn't been stopped with one last victim, I genuinely don't fucking understand where this could have even go. Like, he could have somehow pushed it further. You and I think like there's nothing worse, he has done everything. No, he would have probably found yet another thing, but like, this one was different. On July the 19th, he killed his last victim, Joseph Bradford, who was 25. And again, this guy actually had like a family that he has left behind, and well, Jeffrey followed like the same MO, kept like him for a couple of days before dismembering the body and then keeping the skull in the fridge. That's one of the skulls that the police officers are soon to find. He put his torso in the barrel, again did his decomposition. He was none the wiser that 3 days from then, he's finally, Lord, this is the longest video, gonna be caught. Because, again, he's an escalate, 3 days, this guy brought another person in there. Tracy Edwards, getting cocky, that was your mistake. Not giving advice, but that was your mistake, Jeffrey. You thought you were too out of everybody's league. You thought you were too cocky, little shit. He again brings Tracy Edwards to his flat. Now, Tracy here was handcuffed, right? Because he was like, okay, it's not enough for me to drug them anymore, let's handcuff them. But here, I think, if I remember right, Jeffrey manages to like pass out. Tracy like manages to just like get a fucking break and runs out to the street. You can see like Jeffrey's running after him, right? But there was a police officer just actually in the neighborhood, luckily. And they see Jeffrey literally running out naked, completely drowsy with the handcuffs. and you hear Jeffrey doing the same old talks. So sorry. You remember, we are homosexual, he's black. Remember the drill? It wasn't the same police officer. I imagine it was like, it was just a lover's quarrel. You remember how you hate homosexuals? I'm just bringing him in there. And luckily, this police officer was like, okay, cool. No, I believe you. It's chill. But, you know, let me just see where you're coming from. Let me just see that it's a safe environment. And boy, they go to his apartment. And he would have possibly even gotten away with this. Only if he didn't actually, if wasn't again too cocky for himself, because now these police officers are like, okay, cool, this is weird. First of all, it smells like shit. It smells the most. Also, what is that barrel in the corner, Jeff? Don't worry about it. And you could kind of feel like the police officer is kind of looking into the room and checking out all of these Polaroids, and Jeffrey is out there like trying to go to the door and like fucking skedaddle out of there. But at that moment, the officer opens the fridge, he sees all the fucking skulls, and he proclaims, this is one sick son of a bitch, get him. And like, they cuff Jeffrey. The reign of Jeffrey Dahmer is just over. It's like, fuck me, this story. So, free Britney, by the way. I love how I'm telling you the story of the most gruesome serial killer. I'm like, hey, so remember Britney? How about we put some respect to Britney's name and free her, yeah, and let her live her fucking best life? Oh, God. Okay, so, yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer goes to trial. Oh, this is really chewy now. Okay. Jeffrey goes to trial. He, of course, tries to plead the insanity. At first he said he was not guilty. Again, genius. But then he was like, okay, no, I'm not guilty, reasons of insanity. And everybody, like, first of all, he was barricaded from the people for everybody's protection, and because black people were enraged also. There was like one black juror on the jury, so people were fucking enraged with this. But soon they were like, okay, listen, he's not getting scot-free, like he did the insane stuff. But he was not insane. So all these psychologists and everybody that testified was like, okay, he did this for 13 years. Like, he was not insane. He was premeditated, he knew exactly what worked, he followed an MO. They just eliminated the insanity verdict. He finally got 15 life sentences. So almost for every victim. I think like they couldn't prove 2 of them, because again, bodies were never found, now what. But yeah, I think like once he was convicted, they actually added like 1 extra life sentence. It was like just to ensure you're never getting out of jail, because the evidence was just overwhelming. He didn't even have to give a single interview. Obviously those cops, when they were on the scene, right, when they opened the fridge, they discovered all those skulls. Then they discovered the skulls that were like spray painted everywhere around. Then there's like the infamous picture of them bringing out this huge ass barrel that was full with acid and decomposing torsos in there. He kept everything, all the Polaroids, like every single person was on those Polaroids, and they're different body parts, okay, this story. Then there were the skeletons, remember? Skeletons. Literally, then there were the penises, remember that he kept genitals, this fucking guy. So obviously they could get dental records, they had pictures from the Polaroids, they could identify every single person, like even without him fessing up to everything. But of course he gave like fucking interviews in prison, super fucking famous. Okay, so he gets his life sentence. He's right, cool, good job. Quick question: do you think his prison life is gonna be great? His reputation preceded him. People knew he was a cannibal. People knew that he was doing weird ass shit with his bodies, that he was doing lobotomies and all. People knew everything, of course, and they were like, sorry, serial killer? Okay, who's gonna be the first one to try to like attempt at his life? So, of course, he had like an attempt at his life, but he, you know, well, survived it. No huge damages to him and his body. But then, November 28th, 1994 comes around, so he's been in prison for about 3 years now. He again has done the most. He was like, you know, remember pulling a Dahmer? It's a thing, it's my stand-up thing, this is what I do. So during canteens, he would try to make like different parts of the food resemble different body parts, and he would like spray ketchup over them for people to just be like freaked out, to be like, yeah, this is blood. He did, yeah, a lot of dumb shit like that. Definitely not popular. And at first I think he served like 1 year in solitary confinement and then got out to like general public, and then obviously everybody was like, what the fuck are you doing, Jeffrey? What is this? This is not acceptable behavior. And he was just winding people up and pissing them off, just in general. So yeah, one person attempts an attack on his life. November 28, 1994, so he served 3 years. November comes around. I know I cheated, this is what I'm telling you about. Okay, he didn't die in an electric chair, I told you he got life sentences, right? So, breakfast time, right? It's super early in prison, it's what, 6, 7, somewhere along those lines. He has his fucking breakfast, right? Right. What did he choose for his breakfast? Whatever the canteen was giving. Everything that's on here was what he chose. Cool, great choices, okay. After breakfast, obviously they have these chores, so he went with other 2 inmates, Christopher Scarver and Anderson. I didn't catch Anderson's name. Cool. He went for his janitorial duties, so he was to clean the gym and clean the toilet in the gym. And, well, according to Christopher Scarver, he just kind of gave a signal to the guards and was like, yeah, can you let me just, you know, chat with Jeffrey on my own? And well, according to him, the guards hated him, as in they hated Dahmer. So when he was left with Jeffrey, he just, you know, started chatting him up. It's like, hey, so you know how I am black and you kind of kill black people? What's that all about, Jeffrey? Just like winding him up. And I don't know, like he just said like Jeffrey just in general pissed him off. And also what Scarver said like provoked him. Scarver is a story in itself. I read like an article on him, and I think like he was in jail for murder in general. So he had like some anger management issues, but yeah. So what he said was that it provoked him. He didn't know which one, Anderson or Dahmer, but one of them like kind of pulled him from the back and he snapped, and he took the, you know, like the gym metal pole, and he like battered fucking Jeffrey to death. And then he just, because now he killed one person, so he kills Anderson as well. So these guards come, Jeffrey's in a pool of blood, he's killed, and Scarver is like, good riddance in it. Like, what can I tell you about this? So Scarver got 2 life sentences added to his sentence because of killing Jeffrey Dahmer, but I bet he has reached more of a popularity than Jeffrey ever did in prison. So yeah, good riddance. Am I sad that he was killed in prison? Probably not. Oh, his last words. People love this shit. People love knowing last words of serial killers. Can you even see me? The weather in the UK is different. So his last words were, I don't care if I live or die, just go ahead and kill me. Which I don't know if Scarver just dramatized it. It sounds kind of like a couple of words for it to be last words. You get what I mean? It's like quite a few words for it to be like somebody bleeding out. But sure, yeah. I mean, from the accounts, you remember Joyce, his mom? Yeah, she has said after her son has died, is everybody happy now? And we're like, yeah, kind of, I mean, you were kind of an enabler, also you neglected your son, so what are you dramatizing about? Fucking put your attention to yourself yet again, Joyce. Like, yeah, is everybody happy about now? But like basically she has said during the time in prison, like she would speak to Jeffrey, and Jeffrey was kind of like prepared to die. He kind of knew that it will come eventually, so he would just like tell the mom like, yeah, don't worry about, like, again, he was kind of telling her the same thing that he said as his last words. What a family, what a trip. Wow, so yeah, you know what? Researching people like Jeffrey Dahmer is a lot different than just listening to things. Because obviously when you can listen, you're like, yeah, that's already like a done research. You know, it doesn't affect you as much. You're just like, yeah, you're listening to a story. Researching it actually hurt my fucking soul. I was like, this didn't happen. No, this is some fake crime shit. This didn't happen. It did. This is the story of Jeffrey Dahmer, guys. Wow, what you think about it? Yeah, let me know in the comments. Yeah, you still with me? Did you survive till the very end? Are you still here? What do you think? What is the it for you that like motivated Jeffrey Dahmer, that drove him? Also, remember the things that he did that I was like, I can't explain it. What do you think about those things? Why do you think like, why did he do the most? Why was he just this motivated? Why did he try to do something different and experiment, do lobotomies and cannibalize and shit? Because truly, I can tell you from what I researched, Jeffrey didn't enjoy it. Fuck all. He didn't enjoy any of it. Like, I think like he led a completely miserable life. It's like completely, there was no fucking joy from the get-go in his life. No, there's no joy. His hernia operation, his high school, his drinking. I don't think that he had like a single joyous, happy moment in his life. And that was it. It was just a product killer. He was like, yep, well, might as well just commit to something without any fucking happiness inside. And well, 70 people died for somebody not to even feel a thrill. Not that it would justify it in any other case, okay? I'm not saying that, but it's like, what was the point? What was the point for Jeffrey? So yeah, I'm gonna have next Friday off, just saying, you know, this is why I made this one big, and I kind of cheated. He wasn't on a death row, so as about that, forgive me, yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna take 1 week off, yeah, and then I'll be back with something probably as big, because I'll probably miss you. I'll miss you guys. Okay. But yeah, for now, what was the time? What was the thing that I said last time? What was it? Oh yeah, enjoy your next meal as if it was your last. Is it gonna stick? You decide what sticks as an outro. I don't have it, but yeah, nothing else to tell you, nothing else to say. The cereal is soggy as shit. So